Rightio. Hello everyone. I just want to share with you some of the lots we've got coming up in our next military auction on the 9th and 10th of July. And one of them in particular is lot 325, which is this collection of Overlord and D-Day related maps and paperwork and files. This one here you can see is marked BIGOT to the top and top secret. So BIGOT, British invasion of German occupied territory. And on the front here we have Overlord, engagement of airborne forces. And so inside we have some more BIGOT and top secret marked pieces of paperwork. This one is interesting because it details a lot of the 101st and 82nd Airborne movements on D-Day itself. And this is addressed to Montgomery, and it's from the headquarters of the 1st United States Army, which was so this would have been written by Armour Bradley. And so some of the interesting pieces in this one, we've got the 101st Airborne Division will be dropped as originally planned, except for one regiment in the vicinity of St Mary-Glees. So, that's a town name which has gone down in history, as we all know. Even from watching the film The Longest Day. So this regiment will be dropped further south in order to strengthen the defence from the opposite Carentan. The 82nd Airborne Division to be dropped with one regiment in the vicinity of St Mary-Glees and two regiments just west of the Miradet and north of the Douve, which is the rivers. And it goes through other sort of details to do with the 82nd and the 101st Airborne. What's really interesting though is that this particular piece of paper is dated on the 26th of May 1944. So we are a couple of weeks leading up to what was originally planned to be the 5th of June. Obviously it ended up being the 6th due to the weather. But what's really interesting is point number 11 is the last sentence. And bearing in mind this is so close to the invasion happening, it has, "I still feel that unless this airborne operation is carried out in connection with the assaults on Utah Beach, that the whole operation on this beach must be abandoned." Which is interesting because we're so near to the big day itself and D-Day, and they're already discussing 2 weeks before about abandoning a beach. And it's just mad that these blokes are having to plan this and essentially, playing with people's lives really. But there's here signed Owen Bradley, Armour Bradley. So, and that's we don't know how many numbers, but there's only 5 copies of this. So if there's another one out there, that would be nice to know, but I sincerely doubt it. So, all right, moving on. We've got this is interesting because this encompasses a lot to do with the SAS troops in the Overlord operation, something that doesn't get touched on too much, nor is there any surviving sort of paperwork that sort of relates to the Special Forces in the lead up. So this is prior to D-Day and post D-Day. And what's really nice is this one has all the operation names in which were to take part. So this is to the commander of SAS troops. And here we have Operation Titanic, which was to drop Ruperts, or the dummy parachutists, to deceive the Germans of their intended landing zones. And then it goes through multiple other operations here, and one of them here is Operation Ball Basket, which was you could say an ill-fated operation that took part in the Poitiers region of France, in which several SAS troops from B Squadron, local Maquis and US airmen were unfortunately executed. And then also got here Operation Houndsworth, and this is, on the side here it's all marked D-1 and D, so this is prior, -1, prior to D-Day and on D-Day itself that these were to take place. And then it has other details and bits and pieces of what aircraft to use, what SAS requirements are for which parties of where to be landed from what airfields. And so this all relates to an appendix sheet that we have here. And so this is Appendix A. And as you read through this, you can look across. And so where we've got number 5, Ball Basket, it has here Ball Basket. And it'll have what unit. So we've got the 1st SAS Regiment. And then on D-1 on the left here. And then it has our strength, aircraft and airfield. I come across on D-1 the recce party of 5 all ranks. So the party of 2 officers and one SAS regiment and 3 other ranks. We dropped by a Halifax from the Special Forces headquarters from the airfield of Tempsford. And then on the days following, so D+1 and D+3 and 4, it's showing us the follow-up men that were to be dropped into the area in support of the local Maquis and the airborne operation happening with the 1st SAS. So that's quite a nice piece. That's a nice piece of SAS paperwork that I should imagine that's quite a hard thing to find. So, and then here is just an outline plan for the employment of SAS troops in Overlord itself. So it's a rough. It's almost like it's not a guide, but it has like a breakdown. So advanced recce parties and the main parties and base parties, and then areas which they'd be dropping in, the areas of Brittany, etc. And who else? You know, also we've got the Belgian company, we've got S-Force, we've got the 3rd Parachute Battalion, the French SAS here, which is quite interesting. And how many troops? You know, we've got 30, 120, 120, 60. So there's quite a small amount of men involved in these operations in comparison to being behind enemy lines. And then also, yeah, this is what relates to the appendix map, is that all the areas we have here as well. So you can see that the Ardennes, south of Liege and Huy, and then west of Redon. I'm only showing you a small proportion of this collection because it's very extensive, really. So here's just a couple of the maps that are within the lot. And this one shows the Normandy coastline and inland. And so we can see that there's the vital city of Caen. We've got Bayeux, so this predominantly shows sort of the British sector. These markings, assuming there's something to do with the potential naval bombardment. This is top secret Neptune, so which is the naval side of Operation Overlord. And you can see here that we've got places like the strategic town of Tilly-sur-Seine, which is marked with the 4 there. And then we've got here, which is not far from Esquay, which is just south of Hill 112, and then we've got some other bits down here which all relate to areas of the St Pierre-sur-Dives, which is the Dives River, which is this sort of area here is what was known as the Falaise Gap, Falaise Pocket. So it's nice that it's all featured on here. But there's just another one of the maps which is also in this lot, and what's great about this one is that it gives us a breakdown of who was landing on what beach and when. So once again, marked BIGOT and top secret. This is copy number 1, which is quite nice, and it shows Sword, Juno, Gold, Omaha and Utah beaches. And it sort of shows us, gives a rough idea of where we're expecting men to achieve on that first day, on D-Day itself. So Bayeux was actually taking on the 7th, and then here to reach on the outside of Caen. It's always been said that Caen was to be reached and captured on the first day, on D-Day itself. Here it sort of shows different, to be fair, which is an interesting subject, you know. And then it has a breakdown of all the British, Canadian and American forces that landed on D-Day itself, and then adjusted as to what days. So we have 49th Division, but they were never a first. They were intended to land originally in place of the 50th, but the 50th were to land instead, and they didn't land till later on in the campaign itself, which is probably why it's got D+6 on here as well, and then D+17 for the later divisions were to land, so the 43rd Wessex, the 53rd Welsh, and then the 59th. Another piece that we have here, although not related to the airborne subject of all this stuff, it's all come together in the same lot, which is a intelligence report from the 15th Scottish Division, which landed later on in Normandy, but fought mainly their first action, Operation Epsom, on the 26th of June onwards, and fought with high distinction in the Normandy campaign. And this is one of their intelligence reports, and it goes through the capture of particular villages in the Normandy area, as well as capture of prisoners from the 130th Panzerlehr Division between the 6th and the 22nd of June, and their methods. But it has some interesting bits in this. And if you read the description that we've wrote for this piece, this is interrogation report of Austrian deserters that were captured by men of the 15th Scottish, and it just details in here some of their own personal experiences and their morale whilst fighting for the Germans. And they've given themselves up, they've been classed as deserters, but they've surrendered themselves to British forces due to bad conditions and some of the atrocities that were committed by Germans, also in Russia as well, which they were fighting at previously before coming over to the Western Front. And this one makes for interesting reading. This document is titled "Silver Bullets, Werewolves for Destruction." it's not something I've managed to find too much about on, if I'm brutally honest. It's quite bizarre in its reading. So number one, there is ample evidence, historical, mythical and hagiological, that whales are only susceptible to penetration by a silver bullet. And then, so essentially then the rest of the document relates to what I can only assume is a secret weapon against potential enemy target. This is dated 7th of May 1945, so this is day before VE Day. So whether it's a German target or Russian, well, I don't think we know. But it has here, in conjunction with A, so there'd be an appendix sheet for this, which isn't included unfortunately, and the military government are requested to obtain a supply of werewolves for experimental purposes. So this is the target in question and what it is, but we're not sure on. If this is impossible, REME, so the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers, will be instructed to construct mock-ups based on specifications produced by intelligence, and then what's in Appendix A and the military government, which is very bizarre. And then it says here, lethal effect of silver bullets on werewolves at various ranges, angles of penetration, etc. So it's sort of signifying it's against some form of trial ammunition against a target, but what it is, I don't think we'll know. I think that's one for further research, but it's very interesting reading nonetheless. The rest of the lot, there's too much here, there's far too much here to talk about, but I'm just going to quickly show you some of this in this large file, which goes through, this is all dates from around 1943, and this all goes through deception plans prior to D-Day, so like Operation Cockade, and Rankin, and various other operations in which were going to be diversionary attacks basically, and it includes several maps, instructions for all three services, the Air Force, Navy, and the Army, and this goes on and on. There's so much in here to read and go through, but there's a lot to learn, I know that. And there's employment force, there's looking back at operations prior to this as well, like Husky, and gaining, vital lessons prior to landing in Northwest Europe. And then there is some interesting bits at the back here, which also related to the SAS. Bear with me if I can find it. Review of past operations, so Jubilee, so Operation Jubilee, what happened in Dieppe on the 19th of August 1942. Various opinions on that operation as to why and that happened. And then we have here Avalanche, which landed at Salerno, and all intelligence basically reports back from that, which could help a future operation. And there is a bit in here that does discuss about the removal of the 2nd SAS from the Mediterranean theatre to Northwest Europe in help with the Allied efforts in France. Moving on till 1945, and here's the carve-up of Berlin on the war coming to an end in Europe, and it's quite interesting. It shows all the divide between the British, American and Russian areas. This is also what was the Operation Eclipse. It's all marked top secret. There's other bits of paperwork that relate to post-war divide and fraternisation with German and Russian troops, and it's very extensive, and it's really needs to be viewed in person really, because the quantity of paperwork and maps relating to the Normandy campaign post, and then on to the divide of Berlin itself, and majority of it's all secret marked, and it needs to be seen in person really to get an idea of how large a scale this collection of paperwork is. But just wanted to show you some of the main features which I really think are really pinpoint in this section, which is obviously all this BIGOT marked top secret stuff. Okay, so this is lot 333, which is coming up in our auction on the 9th and 10th of July. And this one is a collection of photographs taken on D-Day itself. from an LCT, which was to land at Gold Beach on the 6th of June 1944. And we have various shots here of the lead up and going into the attack, and destroyers firing their main armament. So some of the nice photos in this selection is these destroyers, which are firing their main armament, which is just off, as it says on the back, is just off of the beaches, so just off of Gold Beach. And then we have an LCT deck here, which is post dropping off men on the 6th of June. As you can see, the scatter of military equipment, you know, compo crates and jerry cans, etc. And in the left corner, you can see on there, there's two blokes on stretchers, and on the back, that one has army casualties in the corner. So this is just coming off of the beach. So that's a great shot taken on that day. And then we have various other shots here of LCIs being tugged into the landing area. And then this one, which is fantastic, which is two LCTs heading towards the beach itself. And then on the back, it has the last mad rush H-hour, which is fantastic. And it says, "This is Peter and Nick and Wally and I," and on the reverse side. So they're fantastic. And then what's good about these is that they are all related, you know. So this one here is LCT 899, which was captained by Peter Colony, and he was to land at Gold Beach, and on the following day he was to get stuck on the beach, and he was tugged away from the landing beaches by another LCT, which is documented online. And it has on the back there, Peter Colony, about 1 mile from the beach. Fantastic. Administrated Order number 1 for the 8th Infantry Brigade. As you can see at the top, it's marked Operation Overlord. So the 8th Infantry Brigade was one of the spearhead brigades of the 3rd Infantry Division that was to land at Sword Beach on the 6th. And this is all the administrated order for post-landing. And so, open it up, we have all the regiments that was associated in the 8th Brigade, so the 1st Suffolk, 2nd East Yorks and the 1st South Lancs. And then associated regiments like the 13th, 18th Hussars, who were operating Duplex Drive Shermans on the 6th of June in support of the 3rd Division at Sword Beach. And then all the various other field regiments, artillery, so SPs, these field regiments that were operating Sexton tanks. So they're all things that related as well to the brigade that would have landed on the 6th of June. And so it has all just general administration, grouping, stores, dumps, and where they would be beyond the beachhead at the south. And then we have like beach maintenance areas. We have movement and traffic control. So, you know, all the vast amount of vehicles that have been coming onto the beaches, all this would have had to been directed. And this is basically, well, this sort of goes into detail on and different areas, transit areas and assembly areas. You know, these have been used for when all these blokes were come to the beaches, even in later waves, and had an assembly area before moving on to their objectives. But this sort of just runs through all these basic things for the 8th Infantry Brigade. What else do we have here? We have a couple of like interesting points in here. So we have all the things that we don't think about in these operations is like petrol and oil and lubricants, all these things that we would need for an army to fight, you know, especially after landing on enemy occupied territory. And then we've got casualties. Rations will not be removed from casualties before evacuation. Naffy packs and water points. And then we have, in one of these here, we have a very interesting bit that talks about burials of men. You know, there's all these things that you don't think about, and all these things that have been documented at the time, and it's all things that you'd likely to forget, I should imagine. But it's included in here of a map, and you can see there's a map here of Sword Beach, with Peter, Queen and Roger and the white and red for each section, and all the assembly areas and all the things that would have been designated for certain regiments, or dumps, you know, all that sort of caper. And then just to go through all the different pieces, there's the appendix. And then what's really nice about this is that this is all on a it's on a unit that spearheaded Sword Beach on the 6th of June itself. Here as we have Operation Overlord casualties for the 8th Infantry Brigade. And so for each individual battalion of each regiment that is here is then itemised with a monthly casualty report. So for the 1st Suffolks, it goes through month, and they have these casualties returns. And so it starts off, we've got May in there and December, and then November, but let's try and find the month itself. So we've got August, you know, the fight was still raging in the Normandy campaign come August and July, and then there's June, so that would encompass the 6th of June onwards. And then it would be the same again we've got for the 2nd Inch Yorks as well, and then the 1st Lancs. All the officers themselves have been named, but the other ranks haven't. So it just gives you ORs 7 and ORs 42, but the officers here have actually been named, so they're all traceable. There are probably many still buried out there. And then just this last little piece that's in this lot is a service clothing book, which is named to D.O. Fraser, who was a major, and he was in the Suffolks. So we can only presume that he was in the 1st Battalion of the 8th Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division.